All right, welcome back. So, question number 5 and question number 6 get a little tricky, but not impossible. So let's take a look. Method number 1. How do we use method number 1? Method number 1 is cross multiply. Okay. So are we allowed to cross multiply here? And yes, we have two rational equations equal to each other. So how do you cross multiply here? Here we're going to multiply this to this and then this to this. So what does it become? It becomes negative 3 times x minus 4 is equal to x times x minus 2. Okay? And then what do? We say, okay, negative 3 times x is negative 3x plus 12 equals x squared minus 2x. Okay? And now once you get to this point, you're like, oh man, mister, how do I continue forward? Notice that if you have a square here, we call this quadratic, right? This word quadratic, because the degree, the highest exponent is 2. So how do you solve quadratic equations? The idea is you want to get 0 on one side and then use your factoring techniques or quadratic formula. So how do we get 0 on one side for this equation? Notice not what I usually do, but usually you want to get the x, you want to get everything to the left side, but here, let's get it to the right side. The idea is, if this is x squared, how do we get 0 on one side? And when we say one side, you could get it on the left side or the right side. But the idea is, because this x squared is positive, if I were to subtract x squared on this side, we don't want negative x squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to move everything to the right side. So how do I get 0 on this side? We're going to do plus 3x minus 12 plus 3x minus 12. Okay? And then what happens here? Notice that this becomes 0. And then this x squared you can't combine. Negative 2x plus 3x is x. And this is minus 12. Okay? Now once you get to this point, notice that we have 0 on one side. So great, we have 0 on one side. What's the next move? You have to use your factoring techniques and or quadratic formula. So try and do that with this. Can we factor this? Pause the video and try and factor this, if it's possible. Can you factor this? Yes, you can. And let me actually just put it over here. And you see, one thing I always like to do, when I was talking about left side and right side, I usually don't like the 0 over here. So what I do is I just do this. It doesn't change anything. You see, all I did was I just switched them. Doesn't change anything. But usually you like to have the 0 on the right side. And yeah. Okay, so then how does this factor? This is x plus 4, x minus 3 equals 0. So then here, let's see, x equals minus 4 and x equals 3. Okay? And the question, once we get to this point, you have to ask yourself, okay? Because here, this is how it factors, right? And then you have to say x plus 4 equals 0, so x is equal to minus 4. You have to ask yourself, when you look at this rational equation from yesterday, what is x not allowed to be here? What is x not allowed to be? Oh, sorry. What is x not allowed to be here? X cannot equal 4 and x cannot equal 0. Because if we put 4 or 0 in here, you're going to divide by 0 and that's undefined. So notice that our solutions are okay. We're allowed to use you're allowed to use any number for x except for these two. And notice that because you didn't get these two, we're allowed to use these numbers. And we'll practice this idea more in the next lesson. Okay? Try and do the same question, right? But what technique are we going to do now? We're going to do the same question, but we're going to use the second method. Okay, so if I have x minus 2 over x minus 4 equals negative 3 over x, right? We're going to solve this same equation, but what's technique number 2? We're going to use, we're going to get the denominators to be the same. So what can you do to get the denominators to be the same? And don't forget about that idea of sharing is caring, right? So here, this is an x minus 4. What does it need? It needs that x. So we're gonna multiply this by x and multiply this by x on top. This has an x. What does it need? It needs an x minus 4. So I multiply the bottom by x minus 4. X minus 4, right? And now, because the denominators are the same, we cancel them out. And then here, we just have x times x minus 2 equals negative 3 times x minus 4. And notice that using this technique, it's the same thing from like what we did in method 1. Notice that this is over here and that this is over here. So when you solve this, you're going to get the same solution as this. Like it'll come out to this over here. So what I want you to do is try and solve it. And I realize I didn't give you guys enough space. So next time when I make this worksheet, I'll make more space. But if you need to do it on a separate piece of paper, try that. And yeah, also try and do this question in both ways. Okay? I'll see you in class.